In India's Kulu Valley, at an elevation of 9,000 feet in the foothills of the Himalayas, lies a tiny town with a very lofty sense of its destiny, a very special awareness of its own unique identity. This is Malana. Here live a few thousand souls whose political allegiance is only to themselves, and whose religious devotion focuses on a deity who is their monopoly. Isolated behind towering mountain passes, they preserve a unique way of life, worship and government, one that draws touristic curiosity and intense scholarly interest alike. Answering the summons of the town crier, the committee or Parliament of Malana begins to assemble in the central town square. What makes this a parliament and not the usual town council is its sovereignty. Because the only law the Malanians recognize is the one given to them by divine authority, by their Lord Jamlu, the paramount god among the hundreds that throng this valley of the gods. According to legend, the Malanian system of government, its constitution so to speak, was given by Jamlu to a member of the Thimiani clan. As with most Malanian legend, there is no date assigned to this event. All that is known is that someone called Soku received the entire system in all its rigid and unchanging detail, an event commemorated with a dance during the lesser Fagli festival. Assembling whenever the need arises and deliberating as long as necessary, the committee settles disputes and complaints, decides matters of town policy, and occasionally metes out punishment, which has rarely been more severe than a fine in living memory. In bygone times, Malana did have its form of capital punishment, with the miscreant dropped off a high cliff into the river with a heavy stone tied to his back. Here, ascending to his place in the Chondra, the seat of the upper council, is the senior pujari or priest. He is one of the 3 senior functionaries of Malana elected for life. The Karmisht or president is another lifelong appointee. The 3rd permanent seat is held by the Gur or mouthpiece of Lord Jamlu. The last Gur died years ago, and Jamlu has yet not indicated his successor. Apart from the main officials, the upper house or Jeshthan is made up of 8 elected Jatheras, one from each of Malana's principal clans. The lower house or Haryank is a more informal arrangement. Depending on need and occasion, it could consist of all the remaining adults of Malana, or it could be confined to merely the heads of families as seen here. Here is the Karmish descending in a dignified manner to liaise with the lower house. Fortunately, he didn't jump down. That would have been an act of resignation applicable to all upper house members and elected officials. This is typical of the sort of importance Malanians attach to small ritual acts without understanding their origins or deeper meanings. In their rigid, structured lives, adherence to prescribed form is an expression of Jamlu worship. This is why no issue is too trivial to be deliberated endlessly by the entire council. This case, though, happens to be a land dispute for a plaintiff from Rashal, one of the 12 villages owing allegiance to Lord Jamlu. To petition the council, she had to light a fire right here in the Harcha, the village's central area. The first upper house member to spot it questioned her, determined that she had a valid case, and appointed 2 town criers for the occasion. These men then covered the upper and lower halves of Malana respectively, uttering the cry prescribed for the particular configuration of council that the occasion required. Finally, its agenda concluded, the committee disperses. The menfolk return to their normal everyday pursuits.
On all sides, Malana is walled off by towering fortress-like mountains. Just 3 passes permit access. These are Chandrakhani at 12,000 feet, Rashol at 8,500 feet, and Jari at 5,000 feet. None of them is an easy or safe traverse. In this unlikely location arose Malana at some unremembered time in the past as the confluence of families from all over the Kulu Valley. Their various origins are preserved in Malana's clan structure and in the very name Malana, which means the meeting or the coming together. Legend has it that the site was founded by 2 brothers from nearby Jari during a hunting trip in Kajli Bijli forest, as it was then known. Seeds from their provisions fell to the ground and sprouted lushly. This unexpected fertility was discovered by them on their next trip and triggered the migration. The younger brother violated his upper caste code by eating beef. His descendants form the untouchable Bajantari families, who live in a separate enclave of Malana. They were cursed not to multiply further. The other brother sired the Puchanis, who are regarded as the original and principal Malanians. But that's legend. Of historical evidence, there is none. There is no mention of Malana in the official records of the Kulu Valley kings, possibly because its independent spirit was an affront to royalty. Yet it is safe to presume that Malana's origins are ancient. Its elaborate rituals and structured government could not have sprung up overnight, and they certainly were evolved locally, not acquired from elsewhere. They do not even remotely resemble anything else in the Kulu Valley or anything known from India's past apart from its bicameral parliament.
As in the ancient legend, people from surrounding towns converge at Malana to this day. But it's not for the fertility. It's to pay homage to Lord Jamlu at his periodic festivals, like the Shavni Mela or harvest celebration. From each of the 12 subject villages, 1 member from each family must attend at least 1 festival every year. The arriving visitors are greeted with offerings of bethar leaves, an aromatic incense that is collected from the surrounding mountains and forests. This task is assigned to special functionaries called Birshuke Baris. Myth ascribes Lord Jamlu's power to his role in the Amrut Manthan, the war between gods and demons for possession of the divine nectar churned from the seas. In that battle, Jamlu was appointed by Lord Indra, the supreme deity, to command his army of gods and goddesses. For this role, he is called God against the enemies, or Tala Shakche. The term is in Bhoti, one of the ancestors of the Kanashi dialect that is unique to Malana. Jamlu's combat skills are still celebrated with an archery tournament during Malana's Lesser Fagli festival. A procession forms with silver trumpets and symbolic sword. It is not just a celebration of Lord Jamlu. The procession is the Devta himself, the deity. He resides not in an idol or temple, but in this particular convergence, this particular Malana. And when it disperses, he subsides back into dormancy. There is a widespread belief in the Kulu Valley that Jamlu is a version of the same Jamdagni Rishi. This is probably a piece of guesswork that's persisted for want of any better explanation. In reality, his name probably is a corruption of Jambala, which in Bhoti means the deity of wealth. For the Malanians, he certainly is that. The care, maintenance and worship of Jamlu is their monopolistic right. It's the source not just of their status, but a good deal of income as well in the form of offerings. Jamlu is the Baradev, or supreme deity in the Kulu Valley. Legend maintains that he descended from Indrakila, a mountaintop, and arrived in Hansa village, in the Spiti Valley, which lies more than a day's trek away. There he still remains in the form of the only existing idol of Jamlu. Spithians also claim that this is the impression of Jamlu's mighty sword. According to Malanians, however, he departed Hansa, passed through Hamta near Manali, and finally arrived in Malana. Malana itself has no idols of Jamlu, but he is represented by the Khandas, the two long swords that are borne in procession. In a way, the Spiti idol is a minor rival to the Malanian monopoly of Jamlu, with 4 festivals of its own. Neither Spitians nor Malanians acknowledge or visit the other. In fact, so insignificant is the Spiti connection that it is often ignored by or unknown to even scholarly researchers. This same lofty isolation is seen during Dashera, the Kulu Valley's principal festival. Jamlu's representative, the Karmisht, attends, but remains on the far bank of the river Beas, occupying a dwelling which is Jamlu's property. For Malanians, submission to Jamlu's rigid revealed law is no burden. It is in fact the source of their power and prestige. What they produce is not just wool or herbs or marijuana or foodstuffs. What they produce is God himself. And this monopoly is what they stand to lose if they get sucked into the mainstream of modern life. A process that has slowly but irreversibly begun. Today, at the end of the first Mela day, a sacramental offering of mustard seeds is being distributed. Anyone who wishes to leave must leave now, or else remain until the end of the festival. Festive dancing is one of the few forms of entertainment the Malanians know. The others being feasting, a few crude games, and most importantly, just gathering together, whether for conversation, negotiation, celebration, or committee discussions, in which everything from the very serious to the very trivial is considered with equal gravity. There is just one indigenous song, no stories, no remembrance of the past, no written record or oral tradition of history, law, property, administration. No arts or crafts to speak of. Even the elaborate temples are built and rebuilt every 3 decades or so by craftsmen imported from other Kulu Valley locales. Perhaps the absence of historical awareness results from the absence of change. Without events, crises, conflicts and evolutions, what could historical records possibly deal with? Perhaps as a defense against the forces of change, Malanians regard foreigners and outsiders as a defiling presence. Falling in this category is anyone not from Malana or the 12 towns that owe it allegiance. Such people may not stay in Malana, but are welcome to lodge at the inn built by the outcast Bajantari families, who are free of such taboos. This woman too is temporarily unclean. She has just given birth to a baby girl and now has to be isolated for 2 weeks in an outhouse specially built for the purpose. She served food there but must not come into physical contact with anyone. In a way, Malana too is under isolation, rigorously protected from the outside world. Nevertheless, video films and other modern entertainments have penetrated Malana's defenses, bringing tempting glimpses of the world outside. Some have actually strayed away, like Beliram, who works as a forest guard miles away in Kulu Valley. But his home remains in Malana, and he never fails to return for every festival. He has one wife here and one other elsewhere, a privilege not granted to Malana's women. He is the first Malanian known to have matriculated, that is, completed school, and now works in the Indian Forestry Department. He also acts as the local liaison for all official government delegations visiting Malana. The Savni Mela is the auspicious time for holding most rites of passage, including the Mundan ceremony, the puberty rite in which male children's heads are shaved, supervised by the deputy karnisht. It's a secular affair with no priestly ritual. This is strange because the Mundan, like so much of Malanian ceremonial, displays tantalizing resemblances to practices in India's Hindu religion. Another rite of passage occurs at night, a wedding held at this most auspicious time. Another secular affair, almost as casual as a divorce, which is done merely by verbal agreement. But perhaps Jamlu's blessings are taken for granted. In reality, nothing in Malana remains untouched by his divine influence.
For example, Lord Jamlu is held to own all the arable land around Malana. The families of Malana cultivate it as his tenants and grow a variety of food grains, a few herbs and fodder for the sheep, which are so central to Malanian life. The sheep provide the wool for all their clothing and trade goods. Their sacrifice occurs in many religious rites, and uniquely, they form a Supreme Court of Appeal for committee judgments that are disputed by the litigants after a special arbitration council has failed to bring about settlement. Here's how it works. The contested verdict is presented to Lord Jamlu himself on a fixed date under the supervision of the deputy priest. The previous night, both contestants have a ritual bath and sleep with just one blanket each. At dawn, they bathe again at the Utak, or freshwater spring, and proceed to Flowberry, the site of 2 pine trees under which Lord Jamlu is said to have meditated. Here they sit on 2 stone slabs, accompanied by their respective advocates. At noon, 2 sheep, or sometimes goats, are brought to the site. These animals have been specially selected by a child. They are tied to 2 poles of timla wood. One pole represents the deity, the other his consort. One sheep represents the plaintiff, the other the defendant. Equal amounts of poison are ground up and inserted into an incision on the animal's hind legs, after which they are bathed. Sometime later, mud is thrown in both their eyes to test for life. The party whose animal has survived is awarded the case. The verdict is taken to have come from Lord Jamlu himself, and no appeals are possible. Especially forbidden is any appeal to an outside court on pain of the highest of fines and ostracization.
Jambala, the god of wealth, becomes a little wealthier today. Visitors make generous gifts of money or little figurines of silver or even gold. Strangely, they usually depict horses and sometimes elephants, a creature that no Malanian has ever seen. This stone slab is the traditional seat of the Gur, from which he makes his utterances.
The qualifications of a Gur were rigid. He had to belong to the Puchani or Durrani clan and be free from physical defects. Most importantly, he had to demonstrate divine possession, which generally happened in the lesser Fagli festival. The process is seen here in a stylized reenactment. In actual fact, it hasn't been done in Malana in living memory. The visible symptoms are an unmistakable trembling, called Devchar, and dancing, called Devkhari. He breaks into a spontaneous recounting of the entire history of man, an epic called the Bharata. He is then imprisoned by temple functionaries and breaks free. Finally, to confirm his candidacy, he undergoes a process of Dvij, or rebirth. He is buried in a pit under a wooden plank covered with soil in which mustard seeds are planted. When the seeds sprout, he is dug up, and if still alive, has passed his first test. His second ordeal is to collect certain herbs from the nearby peak of Girva Koti, a perilous task. Having completed this assignment, he is a confirmed Gur, until his death or invalidity. As Jamlu's mouthpiece, his advice is sought by those in perplexity or doubt, usually during Jamlu's birthday festival. Questions are conveyed to him by special functionaries called Birshu Ke Bari, who also attend to his personal needs. He may not eat outside his home, or smoke, or drink liquor or tea, or touch others, or cut his hair. As with all other Malanian activities, whether profound or petty, the rules and rituals are strict and detailed, and any deviation would incur Lord Jamlu's displeasure. Of the three chief officials, only the Gur is divinely appointed. The Pujaris is a hereditary post held by the Nagwani clan. The Karmisht is elected from the Thamyani clan. Both, however, undergo the same trial by ordeal, the process of burial and rebirth.
After 4 days, the Savni festival comes to a close. Jamlu comes into being again as the procession forms. Later, with his regalia of swords and silver horns, he will be returned to his resting place in the main temple. Buddharam's wife is hard at work. She is cooking a meal of siddhu, a common item in the cuisine. It's a crust of wheat flour with a filling of spiced mashed potato, which is then boiled. In Malana, men's duties are confined to religious and administrative functions, between which the distinction is a fuzzy one. Everything else is the woman's lot, including most economic chores. Her relative inequality is reflected in the fact that she will not inherit from Buddharam on his death. His property will pass on to his sons, or if there are none, to his brothers. In the event of divorce, however, she will get custody of the children. Or, to put it differently, she will take on the entire burden of their support and upbringing. At the uttak or stream, the villagers gather, the women to their chores, some men in idle chatter. This is the second most popular gathering place in Malana, after the Harcha or town centre. Soon it will be winter and preparations must be made. Fodder for the animals must be dried and stored in special granaries. Large reserves of salt must be pounded and stored. This glimpse of the Pujari is rare indeed. Like Lord Jamlu himself, he is not to be seen again until the next festival or ritual occasion demands his appearance. Even his son, daughter-in-law or grandchildren may not visit him. Beli Ram is exercising his forestry skills in setting a snare for a bird, a common sight all around Malana. Beekeeping is another activity that almost every household engages in, yielding a pure fragrant honey that is highly prized. Gori Masi on the left and Indra on the right are singing the only indigenous Malanian song in their native Kanashi dialect. The snows of winter have arrived, and the song outlines the route to Jari and other neighboring places through the only pass that remains usable. This is fortunate because Jari is vital to Malanians for provisioning. It's well worth the 5-hour trek on foot on an arduous path, only slightly improved as part of a recent and abandoned hydroelectric project. Like these Malanians, Lord Jamlu himself breaks out of the confines of Malana once in a century and embarks on a ritual pilgrimage and remarriage to his consort. This is known as Behtar, or recharging of his weakening power. He follows a fixed route, including the crossing of Chandrakhane and Rashol passes. Residents of Rashol accompany the procession. By divine law, only Jamlu may visit the big passes. Other Kulu Valley deities may not be seen at such heights unless garbed in black cloth. As winter sets in, the sheep must be migrated to government-allotted grazing land, many miles away. Accompanying Malanian males will be away for months, and the Supreme Court will not have the quorum necessary to function. Economic necessities have been secured. Government is frozen. There is little left to do. Except, of course, commence another festival, this time the Fagli Mela, with a dawn invocation. This is performed by the Devta band, the drummers who grace all religious occasions. They play the rhythm pattern prescribed for this ceremony, out of a repertoire of 16 compositions. Band members are drawn exclusively from the 3 outcast Bhajantari families who live on the outskirts of Malana. While the elders attend to their revelries and devotions, Malana's children pursue their meager education at the schoolhouse. The school syllabus is far from secular. Reading and writing are neglected in favor of prayer and calisthenics, attending to both body and spirit. It's a sporadic affair. Much of the time the school teacher is absent for his own reasons. While classes go on, other children continue to learn in the hard school of life itself. The schoolhouse also doubles as the post office, city hall, and the seat of the government of India's minimal authority here. At the evening invocation, the Devta procession forms in Flowberry. This event has been delayed through someone's mismanagement. The committee will later deliberate long and hard to prevent a recurrence. Puyaram the priest is under a vow of silence. Protected from prying eyes by his temple attendants, or baris, he performs his ritual ablutions. There are 4 of these baris, led by a Ghatiyani. They in turn are assisted by 5 Puniharis, who do the fetching, carrying and other odd jobs in the temple. Buddharam, the shop owner, is also a tailor. Under the symbol of a sewing machine, he successfully stood for election to the Rural Self-Governing Council. Through this calculated concession to the world outside, Buddharam helps obtain vital grants from the government. His jurisdiction covers the towns of Harchandi and Jana. Some of their people voted for him too, as did all the registered voters of Malana under the committee's instruction. At night, the chosen sacrificial sheep are taken to the lower temple, accompanied by representatives of every Malana family. But that is not all that happens this night. Some Malana girls are spending the night with the boys of their choice, with parental blessing. This is not promiscuity. It's an essential preliminary to the marriage, which will eventually happen. Next morning, not at all bashfully, they emerge from their tryst. Though many visitors like these come for the festivals, it almost never results in intermarriage. Malanian women who marry outside Malana suffer lifelong exile. Inbreeding is the norm. Fortunately, there are rules governing the exact degree of blood kinship permissible between marriage partners. The universe outside cannot be altogether shut out. Branded products left behind by visitors or purchased at Jari are clear evidence that this is the 20th century, something not so evident in any other aspect of Malanian life. Another gathering, another convergence, this time at Gorimasi's home. 4 of Gorimasi's sons are alive, and some are present today. Gangaram Thakur, the 5th son, slipped and fell into the Parvati River some years ago, and his body was never recovered. His death inspired a song in the Kulu dialect, full of loving memories of the boy. Communality continues next morning as the men of the village go in procession for a ceremonial meal. Separate queues form for the upper and lower halves of Malana, treading on paths which have also been stamped into the snow communally. As in all Malana festivals, the entire hierarchy of temple officialdom is activated. The meal is the responsibility of the Baris, led by the Ghatiyane, assisted by the 5 Puniharis. Also assisting are 8 Dhuris from all the 8 clans, who are chosen for life but activated only during the Phagli festival. In fact, Phagli is the time when all officials commence their terms. Hospitality to visitors, however, is in the hands of the 4 Kotiaras, chosen from the 4 principal clans. They are caretakers of the Sadavrat Ki Kothi, a building occupying the middle ground of Malana, where visitors are fed. No one need ever leave Malana hungry. The Baris, Kotiaras and Ghatianis are governed by the usual stiff rules regarding their terms of appointment, clan membership, and details of costume, appearance, duties, personal habits and lifestyle. On the next day of the Phagli festival, the ceremonial kalash of 18 Karadu, or casket of 18 gods, is brought out. Though the karmisht and deputy priests seem to be carrying it, the belief is that it moves under its own power. According to legend, Jamlu brought this casket to Malana, took it to a nearby height, and released the gods. They were born on the breeze to become the principal other gods of Kulu. The seriousness of the occasion does not deter the normal activities of play and work. Malanian lives are so much bound up with worship and ritual that for them, even such mundane tasks express allegiance to Jamlu. At the temple, 5 virgin girls stand guard, shielding the Baris and Gatyani against evil planetary influences. Chanduram is one of the 5 Gatyanis elected from his Tojwadia clan. The Nagwani and Timyani clans also offer 5 each. They all serve for 1 year each in a set sequence, as do the 75 Baris pre-elected to fill 5 posts. Chanduram observes severe ritual restrictions. He may not wear leather footwear, or eat outside his home or temple, or be touched by his family while dining, or cut his nails or hair, or shave, or touch any cooking implements except in the Devda's temple. In return, he outranks even the priest in the temple. He alone may carry the swords, symbol. In Malana, all men and often the women are always on alert. The call of duty could come suddenly. The committee is being summoned and other tasks must wait. Non-attendance is punishable, though the fine is the lowest in the penal code. The committee convenes in the Satravat Ki Kothi, the house of hospitality, which is also its winter chambers. One of the councillors will wave a stick in all directions to signal its formal commencement. Once again, the committee will demonstrate its Radev, its system of rule in the name of Jamlu. A pressing matter is on the agenda. The previous evening's Aarti or ritual invocation was unforgivably delayed. Steps must be taken to prevent a recurrence. This is one of the rare aspects of Malana life, not governed by unwritten rules, so rules must be created. Other typical legislative issues are, is it all right to wear the patterned multicolored Kulu cap instead of the plain Malana cap? Is it okay to volunteer for the government's male sterilization program? Is it okay for the village to partake of the same electricity shared by the outcast Bhajantaris? Answer, yes to all the above. A strict protocol is observed. The upper house on the upper floor completes its preliminary deliberations. The Karmisht and another Jathera or upper house member convey the ruling to the lower house. The matter is thrown open to general discussion for weeks if necessary, until full consensus is reached. This is conveyed back upstairs. Fortunately, this matter is settled quickly. The Karmisht is able to go home and join his daughter-in-law, where he will relax at his handloom, as all Malanian men do, before resuming his festival duties. Incidentally, his name is Shukru, because he was born on Shukrawar or Friday. This is a common pattern in Malanian nomenclature. His daughter-in-law, however, is named Shanti or Peace, which could be part of an alarmingly new trend. Her daughter is named Reena, a glamorous name, which means very little.
Now, on the principal day of Fagli, another procession occurs, culminating in a strange ceremony featuring piles of silver treasure. There is a legend that in the 16th century, 2 sadhus or holy men visited Malana and were given 2 gold coins. On their return to Delhi, these coins were confiscated by the tax collectors of India's Mughal Emperor Akbar. Possibly because of this atrocity, Akbar began developing the symptoms of leprosy. After exhausting all his treatment options, to no avail, Lord Jamlu appeared before him in a dream and instructed him to return the stolen coins, which were stuck together for easy identification. Akbar promptly went in pilgrimage to Malana, accompanied by his entire royal retinue, but was unable to complete the journey. His entourage, however, got to Malana bearing sumptuous gifts, his golden idol and silver elephants, horses and deer. These are the treasures that are celebrated to this day. Strangely, there is absolutely no historical evidence that any of this happened. An exhaustive search of the Ain-e-Akbari and the Akbarnama, the official Mughal court records, revealed not the slightest mention of Malana. The 1837 British government's Gazette of the former Kangra district did, however, recount the legend for whatever that's worth. The procession will end at Flowberry, where the pujari will perform a ritual dance before the treasure. Among other ceremonies, a ram will be sacrificed by smashing against a rock in a manner neither Hindu nor Muslim. The guarding of the treasure is one of the duties of the Pogaldars or sepoys. Their other duties are issuing summonses, collecting fines, delivering messages from the committee, and, on this occasion, barring the film crew from filming the annual display of the treasure.
Today, 4 centuries after Akbar, the world of government continues to intrude with harsh authority. In November 1996, the state police intervened for the first time in Malanian history to deal with a local killing. The government of India also demands that all Malanians be registered with photo ID cards and identifying thumb impressions. The proceedings are carried out in the schoolhouse. This is the beginning of something rare in Malana: record keeping, possibly the beginning of history itself, after centuries in a changeless limbo. So little of Malana's collective memory is preserved, not even in song or story. This song, for example, doesn't really count as part of the oral tradition. It's a song of confession and atonement, sung by Malanian women who have something on their consciences. Unfortunately, it's in a strange language that no one knows, with no resemblance to their native Kanashi. The meaning of its 16 verses is totally lost on performers and audience alike. Kanashi is one of the few clues we have to the historical links. It shows affinities to Bhoti, a dialect of Tibetan, as well as Kinnar, another Himachal dialect. It also has a generous number of words derived from India's ancient Sanskrit language. Jeshtang, the word for the upper house, comes from the Sanskrit Jesht, or superior, and Ang, or part. One could guess at a heavy influx of peoples from the northern mountains, as well as of Sanskrit-speaking peoples from the Aryan kingdoms to the south. According to legend, Malana was ruled by the demon Banasur at the time when Jamlu appeared. To save the people from his cruel and tyrannical reign, Jamlu defeated Banasur in battle and granted him one wish before annihilating him. That wish was that his language Kanashi be preserved. That is the origin of Kanashi according to others in the Kulu Valley. Malanians do not disagree. Meanwhile, the confessional proceeds in the only Malanian religious rite that features women. Catharsis, renewal, rebirth. These are recurring themes in the Malanian culture, reflected in several festivals. Every few decades, the temples of Jamlu and his consort are razed to the ground and rebuilt over a specified span of days. The sutra, or ritual cleansing, follows with an artificial fence around Malana to hold out demons. Periodically, all the sacred instruments and icons carried in the deity's procession too are melted down and entirely recast. A similar rite is the Kahika, held whenever someone gets a premonition that this is necessary. Featuring the sacrifice of thousands of sheep, this is a mass cleansing of the holy soil of Malana. to free it of accumulated contamination. The Behtar, once in a century, sees Lord Jamlu embarking on a pilgrimage through the surrounding passes to recharge his own waning strengths. At Budram Sawmill, we see electrification at work. Apart from a few such small signs of modernity, Malana clings to its strange and ancient ways. The real Malana remains the Malana of the Keparnati mask dance, one of the highlights of Fagli. This is yet another rite of cleansing to ward off evil planetary influences. To a pounding drumbeat, a man, a woman, and a menial wander around the village from the Dharani, Puchhani, and Toshwadia clans respectively. They embrace anyone who crosses their path. Once this must have been done in deadly earnest. Today it's more of a game, with spectators skillfully evading the embraces of the dancers. As the masked players enact symbolic gestures, often with a strong sexual content, the main body of villagers troops behind them at a safe distance. Like all other Malanian rituals and customs, a deep mystery lies at the heart of the Keparnati dance. Where did it originate? How did it evolve in all its meaningful or possibly meaningless detail? Why does a community of a few thousands need to follow such a rigidly structured way of life, with such a wealth of tradition more appropriate to a large nation than to a small village? No one knows, least of all the Malanians. All they do know is that this is how things have always been done. Year after year, they will go through their obsessive cycles of religious and administrative ritual. The women of the Dhara or upper village will descend to the temple of Jamlu's consort in the Sara or lower village and dance in the Kanua Birshu festival. The deity's procession will form, make its rounds and return to dormancy at various occasions through the year. At the Shoiri Mela, all the gold and silver accessories of worship will be repaired and entirely recast every 3 years. At this time, the Devta will make its pilgrimage to Manikaran. The Devta and the Baris will go to subject villages and collect alms and donations. At the Ranga Charua, the Baris will prepare food and reconsecrate the kitchen. Possibly one of the upper house members will die or become incapacitated. The entire Jesthang will then be re-elected. The new members, most of whom will be the same old members, will be anointed in a Bindna ceremony with a smear of lamb blood on their foreheads. And of course, at the Savni and Fagli Melas, flocks of devotees will help confirm that Jamlu's law works greatly to the advantage of Malanians. It gives them status and authority in the Kulu Valley. And it yields a handsome income that annually swells Jamlu's coffers. In laying down the law on which their pride and honor rests, Soku did them a world of good.
many unanswered questions about Malana. None of these trouble the Malanians themselves. When faced with doubt and confusion, they look to Jamlu for the answers. This was demonstrated at first hand to the filmmakers. 2 years into the project, with no sign of completion, they needed to know if the production would be satisfactorily completed. That is, if the Malanians would cooperate. The question was put to Lord Jamlu by the priest after the petitioner had had his ritual bath. 3 lumps of dried cow dung were placed before the petitioner. Mustard seeds were hidden in one, flower petals in another, and the third was empty. The petitioner decided that the petals would signify, yes, a satisfactory completion. The mustard seeds, no, and the empty one, indeterminate. The pujari then randomly juggled the cow dung lumps, and the petitioner chose one with eyes closed. As it turned out, it contained the petals. Jamlu had spoken. The production would indeed be completed with the continued help of the people and officials of Malana. Unfortunately, Jamlu does not speak on the questions that baffle scholars the world over. For example, is Malana a remnant of the ancient Indian kingdoms, many of which probably enjoyed some limited form of democracy? Or were the Malanians Aboriginal inhabitants who sought refuge in such a remote location, fleeing before the Sanskrit-speaking Aryan hordes to Kulu Valley, then known as Kulant Peet, the end of the habitable world? If so, how does there come to be so much Sanskrit in their language? Why do they give their deity a place in the Hindu pantheon? Are the Malanians the remnants of Alexander's Greeks? A theory that survives, especially among Western scholars, even though it is known that Alexander stopped on the far side of the river Bias, according to Arrian, Alexander's own historian. Did Jamlu in fact command the army of the gods in the Amrit Manthan myth? If so, why is his name not mentioned in any version of that myth extant anywhere else in India?
The answers to these questions do not matter in the least to the Malanians. They have not a shred of curiosity about the origins, their past or the future, which is in Jamlu's generous hands. Jamlu continues to spin them through the strict rituals that mark their passage from birth to death, culminating in the carrying of the corpse to the cremation ground of his particular clan. The white flag has a meaning. It keeps away the god of death. One more of the many destructive forces the Malanians must guard against. The corpse's sitting posture too probably has a meaning, but not even the priest knows what it is. For those in the land of the living, life's concerns and issues persist. Something has come up, and the committee must convene, as it has always done, and hopefully always will.